Now we spend a lot of time thinking about how climate will affect crops. But crops affect climate themselves, and they do this in two ways. First of all, about 1/4 of the land surface is used for growing crops. Another 10 to 15% are used for pasture. So a substantial amount of the land surface is used in crop and agricultural production. And how we use that land affects our climate. If we were, for example, to deforest a substantial area and replace it with the annual crop such as soybean, then we would alter the characteristics of the land surface, alter the way that water and heat flows from the land surface to the atmosphere and back, and ultimately change the regional climate if that is not enough to change the land surface. So this is an absolutely fascinating topic, and one that's really quite difficult to understand because of the complexity. It's difficult because it needs us as crop scientists to work even more closely with our climate scientist colleagues. And it's difficult because we have to join our models together.
So, I think you all know what I mean by globalization, don't you? This is the idea that we all live in a global village. With instant communications, we can share ideas, and consume cultural artifacts from countries all over the world, just by going into the internet and all dream up, basically. The world is shrinking. In terms of speeds, it is accelerating, but in terms of distance, it's shrinking. What do I mean by detraditionalization? I mean the disappearance or the erosion, for the better word to use, the erosion of traditional values, of conventional ways of doing things, of conventional moralities. More and more young people around the world are rejecting the culture they grow up in, and it's probably a little bit cruel. But some imitating a Hollywood model of society, rather than the one which they inherit from their local tradition background. Okay?
So, faults are breaks in the Earth's crust. We can identify them because of the discontinuity in the structure within the Earth crust across faults. And earthquakes occur on these faults, so varied processes by which these faults move to a large extent is due to earthquakes. So, we have a fault plane, and the earthquake is so focused on this fault plane. And the earthquake starts at the particular point on the fault plane, and we call that the focus of the earthquake. The rupture propagates out from that point on the rupture plane to cover the entire fault plane. The rupture is in that particular earthquake. We talked about the epicenter of the earthquake a lot. The epicenter is just the surface projection of the focus of the earthquake. So, if you wanted to look at map view where the earthquake was located, we would be able to look that into the Earth. We would see the focus down some depth in the Earth, or the epicenter just a point vertically above that focus at the surface of the Earth. So, this is the relationship between the faults and the earthquakes.
I think there is an intense competition at the moment to hire the most talented and most intellectually able people. There is a time when I think companies have many of the adventures in the world. That involves the company's world. It was the boss's world. Now I think it reverses the case. We have a shortage in talent base within countries and between countries, have an intense battle between companies to hire the most talented workers and also between countries, which are looking to recruit talented young people, talented young immigrants. We have this sense of immigrants being things that countries are battled to keep out, and immigrants want to get in, climb of the walls. I think the opposite isn't that the case. And the topic is that countries are trying to lure bright young people to get them to go to universities and get them to become immigrants. So, on many levels, talent is a premium. There is a shortage of talent, and so countries, companies, all sorts of organizations, of course, volunteer organizations as well as, are competing to hire the best and the brightest. You know, we have a baby boom population which is aging. We have an economy which is becoming more sophisticated. And so, for all those sorts of reasons, talent is a premium.
Today, a university like the LSE certainly has to acknowledge that it is in competition for the best students, all of whom have choices they can exercise, and many of them choices which run across national and continental borders. We are in competition, too, for staff. The academic job market is one of the most global 25 there is. And in the 21st century, English is the new Latin. So universities in English-speaking countries are exposed to more intensive competition than those elsewhere. We are in competition for government funding through the assessment of research quality. We are in competition for research contracts from public and private sector sources, and indeed we are in competition for the philanthropic pound. Many of our own donors were at more than one university, and indeed think of the LSE's requests alongside those of other charities to which they are committed. That is a competitive environment which is particularly visible to a vice-chancellor.
Subscribe our channel to get weekly and monthly PTA exam predictions, according to your exam date. Please like, comment and share this video. Your appreciation is biggest motivation for us. See you in next video.